In a quiet village nestled between distant mountains and gentle streams, there lived a woman who was known by many names: the Mute One, the Silent Lady, the Shadow in the Garden. But her name, her true name, was Liana. She had lived in the village all her life. People barely noticed her. She didn't speak at the market, didn't sing in the choir, didn't argue at town meetings. She simply was. A shadow that swept her steps, watered her garden, and nodded kindly when others passed. What most didn't know was that Liana was born mute. A condition no one could explain. Her parents, ashamed, left her at the doorstep of an old widow when she was only a few months old. That widow, Rosa, raised her with gentle hands and stern lessons. She taught Liana that silence was not something to hide in, it was something to rise from. Liana learned to communicate through gestures, eye contact, and smiles. As a child, she made dolls out of straw and told them stories through touch. She learned to cook without ever asking what ingredients were needed. She observed the world quietly, and learned everything it failed to say aloud. But when Rosa passed away, Liana was left completely alone. She didn't complain. She didn't cry. She just continued. Because that's what she did, she endured. One winter night, as frost clung to the windows and wind howled through the cracks of her cottage, Liana was startled by a sound she had never heard before in her home. A baby's cry. She opened her door and found a small bundle wrapped in a faded blanket. Inside was a baby girl, no more than 3 weeks old, her cheeks red from the cold, her fists clenched tightly. There was no one around. Only a note pinned to the cloth: "Her name is Nia. I cannot raise her. But I hope someone kind can." Liana stood in silence. Not from shock, but from recognition. She, too, had once been a child left behind. Without hesitation, she scooped the baby into her arms, held her close to her chest, and stepped inside. From that moment, Nia became her daughter. Raising a child is difficult for anyone. But raising one without the ability to speak? That requires something deeper. Liana learned to communicate through rhythm. She tapped her fingers on Nia's back to soothe her. She hummed vibrations in her chest when rocking her to sleep. She invented hand signs and facial gestures. Over time, Nia responded not to noise, but to energy. And as the years passed, something extraordinary happened. Nia didn't grow up feeling like something was missing. Instead, she grew up feeling full. Full of warmth. Full of security. Full of a love that didn't need explaining. Other children spoke of bedtime stories. Nia had none. But she had nighttime rituals, a dance of light touches, a kiss on the forehead, a smile that glowed even in darkness. Other children were told, "I love you," every morning. Nia was never told. But she knew. She felt it every day when her lunchbox was packed perfectly. When her mother waited outside the schoolhouse with fresh baked bread. When she cried and her mother sat beside her all night, eyes full of understanding. People in the village began to notice. They noticed how happy the girl was. How gentle. How thoughtful. How wise beyond her years. And they began to see Liana in a different light. The baker who once overcharged her began slipping extra loaves into her bag. The schoolteacher who ignored her now invited her to events. Even the mayor, once dismissive, nodded to her with respect. They didn't say it aloud, but everyone knew, there was something holy about her silence. Something sacred in her love. When Nia was of 11, she fell seriously ill. A sudden fever. Seizures. The doctor said she had meningitis. The hospital was miles away, and the roads were flooded after a monsoon. Liana couldn't speak to call for help. But she didn't hesitate. She wrapped Nia in blankets, placed her on a cart, and pulled her for nearly 10 kilometers through mud and storm. Villagers saw her pass. Some tried to help. Others just stood in awe. Because in that moment, they witnessed something that defied understanding, a silent mother moving the heavens for her child. Nia survived. And the doctor later said, if she had arrived 2 hours later, we would have lost her. Years later, Nia, now a teenager, won a regional writing contest. The topic, the person who taught me the most about love. She wrote, my mother has never told me a bedtime story. She has never shouted my name when I ran too far. She's never said the words, I love you. But I have never doubted that I am loved. Because love isn't always sound. Sometimes it's the warmth of a hand when you're sick. Sometimes it's the way someone watches you sleep like you're the most precious thing in the universe. My mother's silence is not empty. It is full. Full of sacrifice. Full of truth. Full of a love so strong, it needs no words. The essay was picked up by a national magazine. Then by a global one. It went viral. And suddenly, people from all over the world wanted to know, who is this mother? Nia was invited to give a TED Talk. She stood on a brightly lit stage with her mother in the front row, signing silently from her seat. My mother, Nia said, taught me that love isn't about what you say. It's about what you do, how you show up, and who you become because of it. A standing ovation followed. But Liana didn't stand for praise. She stood because she was proud. Not of herself, but of the girl she raised in silence, who was now speaking for thousands. Nia used the momentum to create the Liana Foundation, named after her mother. Its mission, to support parents with speech disabilities and provide tools to help them raise children with emotional richness, not limitations. Workshops, resources, and global communities were created. And Liana, who never asked to be known, became a symbol of what love can look like when stripped of sound, but filled with presence. Liana passed away peacefully at the age of 84. At her funeral, Nia stood beneath the soft glow of afternoon sun, holding the hand of her own daughter. Hundreds gathered. Some had never heard her speak. But they had all heard her love. Nia placed a note on her mother's casket. It simply read, you never said a word. But the world will never forget what you taught it. Epilogue to this day, in villages and cities alike, people gather in community centers, schools, and churches, telling the story of the mother who could not speak but taught the world love. And when they do, they remind each other of a profound truth: you don't need a voice to raise a child. You need love. Deep, patient, powerful love. The kind that doesn't speak, it transforms.